I'm Anna Scheyett, and I'm the former dean of the School of Social Work here at UGA. I was dean from 2016 to 2021, and now I am a professor with a joint appointment at the School of Social Work and the College of Agriculture, where I do research on farmer mental health. Way back when, I was never supposed to be a social worker. I was supposed to be a doctor, according to my parents, and that didn't quite work out. So I had been in the sciences, though, and discovered that while I really liked thinking about genetics was my area, I really hated lab work with a passion. Like one night, I was doing time points at 2 o'clock in the morning, and I'm scraping scum off the bottom of a Petri dish, talking to the cells, and caught myself. I was like, oh, I gotta find a job with more people contact. This is bad. So I didn't know what to do, and I ended up with a job at a women's health center because I spoke Spanish. My mom's Puerto Rican, and so I was counseling women, and I can tell you the specific moment I became a social worker. I was working with a Latina, and she was coming, and she needed to have an abortion. And she told me, I have 3 children at home that I can barely feed, and my husband beats me if I use birth control. And I'm pregnant, and I'm Catholic, and I know I'm going to go to hell for this, but I would rather go to hell than watch my children starve. And I was so outraged that as a society, we would force a woman to choose in her mind between her immortal soul and her children. That's the day I became a social worker, because a social worker is someone who wants to help people, that has a very strong sense of what is just and not just, and a sense of outrage in the world. So if you've got a little anger and some fire in the belly and you want to help people, that's a social worker to me, and that's the day I became one. So I was the Associate Dean for Academic Affairs at Chapel Hill, and I loved my dean. He was my mentor, Jack Richmond, and he was a couple of years older than me, and I mean like just a couple of years older than me. So he was going to be there for a good long time. So if I wanted to grow, I had to go someplace else. So I got the deanship at the University of South Carolina and was there for about 5 years. And went through a number of challenges, but the big one was the massacre at Mother Emanuel Church. We had a program in Charleston, so that was the church of some of my students. And that rocked South Carolina. And so we saw that, and the School of Social Work worked with the National Association of Social Work in South Carolina, and we had conferences. One of the people who was killed at Mother Emanuel was an alum of our program, and his children were some of the people who spoke at the trial, because the trial was incredibly profound around confrontation and forgiveness. And their motto had been, hate won't win. So we did a conference, #HateWon'tWin, that brought together people to talk about race relations in the United States, and specifically in South Carolina, which was where the Civil War started. And the flag came down, and a lot was happening, and I really felt profoundly called that dealing with social justice, racial justice, social justice, equal justice, was what I wanted to do. And South Carolina was a good place, but Georgia, and what Maurice Daniels had done before I got there, was a place where those conversations could really happen. And I remember telling my husband, if that Georgia job ever opened up, and Maurice isn't going anywhere. And then a year or two, somewhere into there. Later, I heard he was retiring. And I was like, okay, I really, really want to apply for this job. And they liked me. And so here I was, specifically for that, and specifically because of those experiences in South Carolina. I felt like the next step was coming to a place like Georgia to do the work here. I think that the quality of this school was one of the best kept secrets in the country. The university didn't know what it had. I don't think the profession knew what it had. So one of my big challenges was changing that and getting our story out there in a compelling way, for a number of reasons. One, because it was really important. Two, because if you as dean want resources, which you always do, people need to know how good you are. So doing that, helping the university understand what we could bring to the table, what we were doing in Georgia, that we were in so many counties with our research and our internships, and what we brought was a really big piece. And then advocating for the resources to do more of what I did. I think another challenge was growing the research endeavor, while not losing sight of the teaching. That's the key, because there are universities where you grow the research endeavor and, you teach some classes. But if both are going to be front and center, that's an important balancing act. Finding the right faculty, new faculty to come in, was a real challenge. And keeping the social justice front and center at a time when our society was getting more and more polarized around those issues. That was hard. Then came COVID. And my biggest challenge was making sure nobody died on my watch. It sounds flippant, but I meant that most sincerely. I felt a tremendous responsibility to do everything that I could do to keep people safe. One of the first things, because we all got sent home, and one of the first things that happened was that as good social workers, we all communicate. So there was all this communication coming, and we were all drowning in it. This is happening, this webinar on COVID, this project, this information, this is the latest information on what we do around keeping ourselves safe. It was totally overwhelming. And I was afraid that particularly students were just going to stop listening because it was too much. And B, I was afraid people weren't going to get the information they needed. So I started the Dean's Daily Digest, and I told everybody, send it all to me. And I distilled it down, and at 4 o'clock every day, I sent out a digest of, here's the news that we're hearing about safety, here's what the university is announcing, here's the webinars, here's opportunities to volunteer, here's everything, and it's in one place. And this is everything that I've gotten, And I would do flippant things, like I'd put, little snips of YouTube videos or a Spotify song or something, but I did that every day. And I did that, I think, from when we went home in March till the end of the summer, till the fall. Classes went online with less than 2 weeks' notice, and faculty who'd never taught online were expected to do that, and students who'd never taken a class online. And one of the issues for some of our students, and this was true across the university, is everybody went home. Well, home in some places was rural Georgia, where the broadband's awful. And I remember getting an email from a student going, I'm spending my days in the parking lot of McDonald's because that's the only reliable Wi-Fi in my town. Can you help me? And so the university was great, and the university bought hotspots that we could mail to people. But it took a little while for them to get that organized. In the interim, I would just ask her, I said, what county are you in? And I called the county extension office. And I said, I got a student here. Can she just come sit in your office and use your Wi-Fi for her classes? Because otherwise she's going to have to drop out. And they were great. Yet another example of how extension is just amazing because it's everywhere across the state. We just kept chanting to each other in the School of Social Work. We have to give each other grace. We just have to give each other grace. Students and faculty. Students, faculty don't Some of us never done this before. Faculty, some students have never done this before. Everyone, please, let's just give each other grace and try to be kind. In terms of a conflict that came about, really at its core, it was a misunderstanding between the school and the university during COVID. The university, at a certain point, started getting limited amounts of vaccine. And there was this, the governor had this whole, list of who was a priority population and such. And the university had decided that among the number one priority was our medical students and our pharmacy students, because they interacted with patients regularly in their internships. And I found this out in a dean meeting and went a little bit ballistic, because for every pharmacy student you had, there were 10 social work students in the field. What about my students? What about your students? My students are in homeless shelters. My students are in schools. My students are in hospitals and clinics, and they are just as exposed to COVID as any of these other students, and my students need vaccine. So the president and the provost were, we get vaccine, and the head of the health center calls me, because that's where it's coming out of, and goes, okay, so who needs vaccine? How many do you need? And, I think there had been like 40 or maybe 100 med students. I don't know. It was a smaller number. And I go, well, for starters, I need about 350. And he goes, that's not possible. Like, yeah, it is. It's possible. These are my students, and they're out there, and they all need the vaccine. So it took a little education, a little advocacy. But every student who wanted one got a vaccine. I think my students got vaccines before I did. But it was a matter of, the importance of human beings and sticking to your advocacy skills and doing it with integrity and making sure that social work students didn't get forgotten. Greatest accomplishments. And when I think about greatest accomplishments, I think about the accomplishments of the school, because I did nothing by myself. I mean, this is what did the school do? One of the first ones, and one of the ones that just thrilled me and let me know that I was in the right place. When I first got here, early on, we did a faculty retreat. And my question to them was, who are we? What do we want to be known for? What are we committed to? And there was a lot of discussion. We had some great facilitators. And the faculty came out really saying, we want to be the school of social justice. It's one of every social worker's core values from the Code of Ethics, but this is us. This is where we plant the flag. And then over the course of the first, I think it might have taken a whole year. Maybe it only took until January. We came up with a social justice statement through a series, processes of what are the key points and, all that group work that you do. But we came up with a document, our social justice statement, and I made the faculty vote on it. And it was a unanimous vote, and that was our document. And I was so proud of this school. And we shared it with the staff and students got input in the process. And, and then I would take it to like the National Deans Associations and go, look what my faculty have done. And it was like a touchstone. It was a really grounding experience for us. And I think it informed a lot of what happened afterwards. So that was one of the things that I think was a huge achievement and accomplishment for the school. Then there were lots of new programs. We had a certificate in substance use disorders that was developed, the nonprofit management certificate. Online was new for us. We did our certificates online. We have a fully online MSW program now, which to me ties in really nicely with social justice, because there are people who are economically or for other reasons place-bound, and they should have access to the same education as anyone else in the state of Georgia. And through the online MSW program, we can do that. You can get your MSW. So those were important. The research expanded dramatically, and I was really proud of that, not for the dollars that it brought in, but because of the work that was done. The Center for Human Trafficking Research and Outreach is incredibly proud of that. David O'Ketch started it with my support and encouragement. And they had a celebration, it was about a year ago, I guess. And they had guests that came from the countries in Africa that they're working with, and they were talking. And David was able to announce that in addition to this research and this new methodology, because it's really hard to count trafficked people because they're hidden, this new methodology and all this great research, their programs in Africa had been able to help 150 girls escape out of human trafficking in the past X period of time. And that it filled my heart because it was the best of both. It was the best of the research and the service, the doing, and students were learning from it. Students are placed at Centro. So that was a big thing. In my head, my responsibilities were to hand off all the information, to make it very clear that I was available at a moment's notice at support, and to get the hell out of the way. So I left. I didn't come to faculty meeting for the rest of that, because I ended January 1. So I didn't come to faculty meeting. I stayed away because I wanted the school to be able to reorganize without me there. And if I was there, there would always be the person, oh, by the way, could you, or whatever. And it needed to reorganize without me there. And Lee Cornelius did a great job of managing the transition, and then Philip came in. And then, with Dean Hung, I did the same thing. It's like, I am here whenever you need me, but hands off. And I have an office in Ag, so I split my time. So physically, I'm in the building maybe a day or two a week. But whoever comes into a deanship needs to grow into who they are. And, and Dean Daniels gave me that gift. He was on the faculty for a year after I was there, but he was not breathing over my shoulder or clinging or anything. So I felt like it was really important that the school keep moving forward. And any institution is always more than any one person. So yeah, y'all are just fine. Go, see, you're doing great. Being able to be a dean is an incredible privilege. I mean, it's a lot of hard work, and you get deans together and we grumble. But oh my goodness, it is such a privilege to be in a place where you're surrounded by brilliant people, faculty and students and staff, and people who are so committed to the work. I mean, I remember having a conversation with a staff person who was having to advocate for a family member in a medical condition, and her going, I did it like a social worker. I've learned. And it's a culture. And being able to be in the middle of that and to be able to facilitate that, to connect the dots and make the magic happen, not because I've got any magic, but because when you pull together the right people in the right places, magic happens. I used to tell students that social work is a miracle, but the miracle of social work is that good things happen despite the system, not because of the system. Because we all know the system is kind of tangled. So the miracle in social work education is that we get to do what we do and stay true to our values, which are very egalitarian and focused on social justice and very about relationship and people and trust. In the single most rigid hierarchical system, except for the church, there is in society, the university. And navigating that absolute contradiction in terms is one of the major responsibilities of a dean of a school of social work. And it's never in any job description. No one ever talks about it. But you are in this profession where your code of ethics says you have to be like this, in a system that says you have to be like this, and figuring out how to make that work is, I talk to new deans about that.